And we're on. This is 3 Yards Per Carry. I'm Alfredo Artiaga. Simon Clancy is here. Chris Kaufman is here. I'm here. And as always, we are brought to you by 305 800 Pain. Uh, no jokes this time. Dolphins won a game. So it's kind of like a victory Monday. The first one of the season, because the last time they won was on a Monday night football game. So we had a victory Tuesday. So it'll be cheerful or not on this show. But we are always brought to you by 305 800 Pain. Better Business Bureau accredited with an A+ rating. Your car accident personal injury specialists. Fast connections with trusted doctors and attorneys. Always ready to take your call 24/7. Again, that's 305 800 Pain. 305 800 Pain. And for this week, we are also brought to you by Govi.com. And they gave us 3 pairs of club seats, of which we gave away on our Discord this past week. And if you want to become a member of our Discord, you can see right there under my name. And you can see it at all the clicks, all the links that I provide when we promote these shows. It's discord.gg/OnlyFans. You become a member there, all access for $4.99 a month. Govi is a global leader in smart lighting innovation. Recently announced a partnership with the Miami Dolphins, bringing Govi's smart outdoor lighting solutions directly to your homes of Dolphin fans everywhere. Since 2017, Govi has been redefining the smart living experience as a true innovator in smart lighting. Go to Govi.com for more information. That's GOVEE.com. Govi. All right. Let's get this show on the road. Simon, how did you experience that game? Because I was like kind of indifferent. I kind of jazzed that they were playing so well. In the grand scheme of it might not mean anything, you know. But good mental health win, I guess, because my God, it was miserable around that building and around the players and around the team and around the people that covered the team. So yeah, did you experience it?
Good win for the team in terms of, and like lots of things worked really nicely. I think and I said it on social media, but I thought that the kind of the construct of the win, they stayed. I have to give Mike McDaniel enormous credit for he stayed with the run. I thought the script was excellent. Generally, everything functioned pretty well. I think the macro picture, though, is, if no 1-6 team has ever made the playoffs, right? The chance of the Dolphins making the playoffs is, they're not going to make the playoffs. So what do we want us to be moving forwards in terms of the macro picture? Do we want to finish, 6-11 or 7-10 or whatever and get the 14th overall pick? Or do we want to lose games, not intentionally, but are we happier to lose games knowing that we're going to end up with a top 5 pick or a top 3 pick where we get a Fernando Mendoza, where we get a Ruben Bain, where we get a Ty Simpson, where we get one of the kind of blue chip players of this draft and we can rebuild? Or do we find ourselves picking, a second or third tier player because we won 7 games and we're yet again stuck in that kind of mid-table mediocrity that we seem to, like a ship yawning from, on top of the wave and then down and then up and then down, but never really moving forwards or backwards. And so for me, and I said this persistently over the last few weeks, it was nice to win, but the macro picture for me, Chris, felt a little bit like, especially on a weekend where the Jets won. You could have, if you lost, you could have been in the. And I know this is going to grind with some fans, and I do apologize because I know just fans, we all just want to win, but I just think, to me, in terms of the rebuilding the Miami Dolphins, and look, what would happen? What would fans think if we got to 6-11 or 7-10, and then Chris Greer stayed? Even though that's the thing, Chris, for me, that there's got to be wholesale changes, and the more we win, the more possibility those changes don't happen. And I think Mike McDaniel proved that he could be a good coach yesterday, and if he can be more consistent with that moving forwards, then who knows? But this club winning 6 or 7 games, I don't think is particularly valuable for it moving forwards.
Yeah, I think Mike McDaniel proved that he was a bad coach yesterday.
Oh, what, by winning?
Yeah, I think that he proved that. I mean, when you look at what they did in the game, and you look at the recipe, and you look at all the things that they did to be successful in that game, a lot of it was elective. they could have done some of this at any point, not just this year, but in the last 3 or 4 years, right? Why do you have a head coach that, an offensive guru that takes 4 years to figure out that if you hand the ball off to a big back between the tackles on 3rd and short, you're probably going to have a better chance of success than the sort of misdirection based Mickey Mouse plays that Mike McDaniel has been running for 3 or 4 years, right? Why did it take so long to figure out some of this stuff? Why has it taken until game 8 of this year to lean more on the run game, lean more on the play action game in order to help out your quarterback? Why? I mean, there's a lot to be said here. And afterwards, Mike McDaniel, I felt like was, full of more excuses about the commitment to the ground game and in the previous games. And, it didn't happen because the game got away from us. And, this game didn't get away from it. Okay. So you were front running the entire time. And that's the entire, that's the only scenario in which you're going to show, commitment to the ground game in order to help out your quarterback. I think that there was a lot that happened in the game that sort of just made me angry. And so I walked away from the game. Yes, there's definitely the mixed feelings. Do we want wins at this point? When that's going to screw up the draft standing, when that's going to, perhaps give people the illusion that things are okay. The decision makers in particular, that things are more okay than they really are. Yes, we all have mixed feelings about that. And as long as you want what's best for the team in whatever terms are, most appropriate to you, whether that's long-term, whether that's short-term, everybody, the definition of a fan is that you want what's best for the team. But that doesn't mean that you want what's best for the team in the upcoming game. It could mean you want what's best for the team over the next 3 years, something like that. And so everybody will fan a different way. And I don't think that we should be gatekeeping how that's done. So, whatever you were rooting for, I don't really care. Whether you're rooting for a win, whether you're upset that they got a win, or whether you're happy that they got a win, that's up to you. I don't care. What I do care about is being shown explicitly that some of this stuff was in the bag the whole time, and we just didn't go for it. And so it sort of tells me that until the Dolphins had maybe the lowest moment of the entire franchise since Mike McDaniel joined. I think the Browns game, could we say that? I think that was probably from the moment Mike McDaniel was hired to that Browns game, that was probably the lowest point in the franchise over that history. Until that happened, we didn't see changes like this. Why? It defies logic and rational thinking. And so I walked away from the game really just upset and convinced that Mike McDaniel is not the future of this franchise. That's the reality of it. And I hate to say that, because obviously they had a good game, and people will spin it and they'll say things like, I think that the Dolphins players showed that they haven't given up, and that sort of thing. Or Mike McDaniel, congratulations, turning this stuff. You're 2-6, bud. I think that it showed kind of the opposite, really. And that left me with a very frustrated feeling.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. When you said that, what was the way you put it? When you talked about it made you, you were unhappy, but you felt like they had it in the bag.
Yeah, they had it in the bag the whole time, and it
Right.
took until they got to the lowest point in the franchise's history or memory since McDaniel got here to actually reach for some of these changes.
That's how I felt for the most part watching that game. Like you would think, like look, I was happy that they played well and won because I like a lot of players on that team. I like people that work in that building. Okay.
Mhm.
And if you think it just affects, and for you fans out there and listeners that you think it just affects Chris Greer or the people, the big people that are going to lose their jobs, no, there's a lot of little people that could be losing jobs as well. Because trust me, you bring in some big wig like a Nick Saban, he's going to want to. Nick Saban got here and fired the longtime secretary that was there from Shula. Okay, so it happens. All right, so that they won, yeah, it was a good mental health win because nobody likes to go through weeks and weeks and weeks of misery. But I just kept thinking to myself, you had all of this before.
Mhm.
Okay. The one that kind of, I won't say pissed me off because you just can't get, I'm not angry. I 1-6, you're indifferent. Okay. You're not angry. You're angry at 1-2, 1-3 when you think like, you know what, we should be 2-3 or we should be 2-2. That's when you get angry. At 1-6, you should be just indifferent at this point,
Mhm.
right? But what made me kind of angry, I would say, Frank Smith down on the sideline. It took 2 years to fix some of the operational issues on the offense,
Mhm.
and then they kind of crept right back in 2024. Remember last year when it looked like, oh, they solved this, they fixed this, and then all of a sudden it started showing up toward the end of the season. It took 4 years to get Frank Smith down on the sideline, and lo and behold, he has a hand in personnel groupings. And lo and behold, they're actually, they employed a guy at tight end who had never played tight end before. And by the way, now that makes 6 positions that Daniel Brunskill has played in the NFL. So kudos to him. Do you guys hear about how that came about? They literally called him in the middle of the night and told him, hey, we got 15 plays you got to learn because you're playing tight end on Sunday. And he figured it out. Okay. That's Frank Smith getting an offensive lineman on board to run an install that they ran a lot of. Okay. Because he played a lot of snaps. And it worked. And how did it work? Because he had his hand in actually implementing it on game day because he was running personnel. Okay, let's let the cat out of the bag. When you look on the sideline and the guy standing the closest to Mike McDaniel and hearing the play call and then motioning to the different personnel units, the running backs coach, the wide receivers coach, he's running personnel, and all of a sudden it runs smooth. 4 years in, come on, you use 3 running backs when most of the year you were only dressing 2 for whatever reason and running Malik Washington out there. So I am 100% with you on this, Chris.
Well, what about Alf? The fact that after the game, Tua talked about how he when Frank was in the booth. Well, first off, everybody, a bunch of players after the game raved about having Frank Smith down on the sideline. Right?
Yeah.
This was unqualified. Everybody considered this a plus. Which again, you didn't think about that until year 4. Thanks. But second, like you hear Tua talking about it, he's like, well, when Frank's in the booth, I never get to have any communication with and then it begs the question, well, who does your franchise quarterback get to communicate with on the sideline and kind of go back and forth? I guess just his quarterback's coach, but then you're playing a game of telephone between Tua and the QB's coach, who's got to go to Frank Smith, who's got to go to Mike McDaniel, who is the play caller. It's this string where the Dolphins have put Frank Smith on the sideline and sort of given a bypass of a lot of that, because I don't think these players can go to Mike McDaniel during the game and just talk about this stuff, because he's wearing 2 hats. He's the head coach. He's busy enough, in other words, right? He's the head coach already, and he's the play caller, and so he doesn't have that sort of time. So you'd like to think that you could make the offensive coordinator a little bit more accessible to these guys, but obviously there was broken communication there, which got fixed magically in week 8 of 2025 after you're already 1-6. And so it just goes to show, Could they learn a lesson from this and then, do it this way from now on, and then things will be run smoother and things will be better, and we should say let the past be past and whatever. Yeah, there's part of that. The part of that is there, but also for all we know, they're just going to put Frank back in the booth. That worked for that game, but because that's Mike McDaniel's MO. Or next year when Frank is not here, because I don't think Frank Smith is going to be in Miami in 2026, regardless of what's happening, right?
Mm-hmm.
They get a new offensive coordinator who's up in the booth.
Well, unless Anthony Weaver is the head coach and Mike McDaniel is canned and Frank Smith is handed the offense, that's always a possibility.
Yeah, we're talking pretty low odds bet, but it's just it's frustrating, and I'm sorry I didn't walk away from it like encouraged. I came away from it actually discouraged.
I completely agree. We're going to go to break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about the defense and a different view on Anthony Weaver. And I've been a critic. I'm going to admit I was wrong on this show when we come back from break. But first, these words. And we're back. Simon, Channing Crowder did a great job today. By the way, I don't think you got duped. Mark Hochman does do those dumb tweets, and his was a banger today. Okay. What was his tweet again? What did it say? You put it on our Discord.
It was something about putting Stephen Ross on the elevator doors because he'd done such an amazing job.
Yeah, he says, "Thank you, Stephen Ross, for the patience."
The patience and to see out all the noise or whatever.
Yeah. Mark Hochman does that. Okay, it's a shtick. But on his show with Channing Crowder, broke down the defensive game plan, and he absolutely loved it. And watching it today, Anthony Weaver won in his he not only won in his bag, that guy fixed a problem. And it's been 8 weeks. This team cannot stop the run. They just can't stop the run. They're facing Bijan Robinson. The threat of 200 yards rushing was staring them right in the face. And what does he decide to do? He plays his tackles right over the guards for the most part for pretty much the entire game, right? He has his linebackers go from the 2-gap scheme to just firing 1 gap, and they do not allow the Falcons to pull any guards the entire game. Of course, when you do that, you have to trust your 2 corners on the outside. They did, and Kirk Cousins helped them out in the process. What did you make of the defensive game plan and the defensive play? I thought was actually kind of impressive, Simon.
I thought defensively it was impressive. Bijan Robinson, we talked about it in the previous show. We thought he was going to go for big yardage, and one of the things I think Zach Wilson did really badly was that they abandoned the run pretty quickly. There was very little Tyler Algier, which I was really surprised about. I just thought those two would just be banging and banging. And to the credit of Mike McDaniel, I think the Dolphins did essentially the opposite of what I thought they would do, because what you usually get is what Atlanta did, which was kind of abandon the run and, just not go back to it. I mean, for Bijan Robinson to have 9 carries against a team that's the 32nd ranked team in the NFL against the run seemed pretty ludicrous to me. But yeah, look, I thought they attacked the ball. They came downhill well. They were getting pressure off the edge. They were moving Jalen Phillips around, and he was running some of those tiger formations that we've seen before. We saw with Jason Taylor, and he was getting pressure. I haven't looked at the All-22, but it feels like Grant and Sealer had better games. I thought Jordan Brooks was outstanding. The run fits were excellent. We're hitting the right gaps. The gap control was way better. We talked about it off air. I thought Russell Douglas played really well. I thought Dante Trader played well. And the more that Trader plays, the healthier he is. I think, especially when the play's in front of him, he might have a future. And he comes downhill and he hits hard and he's a good tackler generally. I thought overall, hats off to Anthony Weaver because I thought the game plan was pretty spot on.
Yeah, Dante Trader, he deserves some flowers. I watched the All-22 today. In that split safety look, like you wouldn't think that that's something that he can do. He showed a lot of range, a lot of instincts out there. I thought he was really, really good in the game. And I've said this before, and, I would caution against trading Jalen Phillips because you got to see he had a 60% pressure rate yesterday. He was everywhere. and he did get the near sack. He had 2 near sacks, but he had a ton of pressures, and he kind of showed he's coming along. And I'd hate for somebody else to get the benefit of Jalen Phillips going forward. So, but what did you make of it, Chris? Anthony Weaver, big ups to him. I thought,
Yeah.
it took Mike McDaniel 4 years to fix some problems on this team.
Mhm.
It took Anthony Weaver, 8 weeks. That's improvement.
I think that's actually the point that I would raise, is that you could trace almost a straight line from week 1, when the defense was, among the worst that we've seen since 2019, right? The Colts game, that week 1, and go through all those. Remember it's been X number of drives and they haven't forced a punt a single time, and that. You could probably trace a straight line of improvement in the defense from week 1 to week 8, and I think that, every week has been, for about a month now, every week has been the best game that the defense has played. That's improvement as you go along. That's players starting to get the scheme better. Which, by the way, I've said it many times before. This defense had the most snap-based turnover of any defense in the NFL this year. So it's it's not. You're not building off of 2024. They had a lot of turnover. So they had a lot of turnover. You're getting guys week by week getting the scheme better, but also the coaches are starting to understand the players a little bit better, and understand how to use them, what situations they will excel in, and things. And no, that's not always obvious right out of the box. So I think that this is a straight line improvement that's happened last week against the Browns. If it weren't for the offense's abysmal showing, then you have a Browns offense that basically broke down to one big run play. So I think that this is continued improvement. It's a lot of rationalization that's happening in how they're using the rookies on the interior defensive line. A lot of rationalization that's happening in the defensive backs. Minkah Fitzpatrick as the nickel is again a big deal, and it highlights just what they lost when Kader Kohou went down. So, and how destabilizing that is. And so in addition to all the turnover, there was the loss of that, which is turning out to be kind of a linchpin. So yeah, the defense is getting better. They're continuing to improve. There's still work to go. I think that there's still, a lot more coaching decisions that can be better on this defense. But it continues to improve, and that's why I pointed this out, before the Browns game. I said, we're seeing week over week improvement with this defense and rationalization of certain positions, particularly of the young players, and taking a little bit off their plates, to where we should probably expect better defensive performance going forward, and possibly a lot better defensive performance, but I don't know if I would go that far. That said, easy to focus on the run and Bijan Robinson when Drake London's out. When Michael Penix is not the quarterback anymore, and I'm sorry, I know that we kind of have, sometimes we do this thing where we casually I think Kirk Cousins could be even better. And yeah. 5 years ago, Kirk Cousins might have been better. I mean, last year they went through the laundry list of injuries that he's faced in recent times, whether it's Achilles, whether it's a bunch of other things. And then there's
concussions.
And then there's the simple fact that he's not been the guy running the offense. It is, so you go from Penix to Kirk Cousins, you're going to get disruption. And actually the game kind of reminded me in that regard, for Falcons fans, it would be like the equivalent of what has happened many times to us Dolphins fans when we've been without Tua and we're without some other high profile guys, and we're kind of like, oh yeah, but we'll win anyway. I mean, but it might be close, like, and it turns out that when you lose your starting quarterback and when you lose your blue chip wide receiver, things can be a little difficult. Things can be a little hard. And, even on the defensive side, the Falcons, we sort of already talked about Miami offense, but I told you before the game, guess who their highest rated player is? Your old nemesis, Divine Diablo. Well, he didn't play. He didn't play either. So when you're missing some of your best players and you're facing a team that is literally just hit rock bottom, like the rockiest of rock bottom, and ready for a bounce back, that was a bad formula for the Falcons in this game. It really was. And, you can already look at Vegas and the analytics people and the smart football people and the fact that they are favoring the Baltimore Ravens by 7.5. And Baltimore's on a short week traveling to Miami. So this is Miami at home. Miami is a 7.5 point. That's insulting, by the way. But as a 2-6 team, you deserve the insult. So, you're a 7.5 point dog to Baltimore Ravens, who have also been bad this year, right? They've also been bad this year. That's really insulting. That's Vegas and the smart analytics and the smart football people telling you that what you saw from the Miami Dolphins was a dead cat bounce. That was a dead cat bounce off of the rockiest of rock bottoms from that Browns game. And the Falcons, stepped right into it because they were missing the starting quarterback, their blue chip wide receiver, and some of their best players. And it's like, we're going to be fine anyway. No, not really.
It's also Lamar Jackson and his offense that averages 34 points a game when he's starting is returning.
Sure, but they lost with Lamar Jackson too.
Yeah, scoring 40 something points against the Bills.
Losing is losing. Why is the Baltimore defense suddenly going to be so good?
Yeah, they're not
in
good.
Miami off a short week.
Yeah, they're not good. That's one thing that Atlanta did have over, and Atlanta was favored by 7 points. That's one thing that Atlanta does have over Baltimore. Baltimore's defense is atrocious. They did get Roquan Smith back for this last game, so that should help them a little bit. But that offense is absolutely a machine. And I think people still look.
Atlanta's offense has been really good this year, or has been pretty good this year.
If you look at the Ravens' odds to win that division, my God, they're 2-5, and I think they're the second favorite to win that division, which is crazy because they're 2 games back from the Steelers, but people still favor them to somehow win. All right, let's talk a little bit more about the offense in this game. Simon, we talked about this in the preview, and I said I think Miami's going to score points, although I had them losing 34-27. But I said they were going to score points because for whatever reason, maybe Jeff Ulbrich has a blind spot or something against Miami. But 4 games, they averaged 32.5 points against them, and the only time that Tua didn't play, and by the way, Tua is 4-0 against Jeff Ulbrich. The only time that Tua didn't play, Tyler Huntley started, and he scored 26 points. And we know how incompetent that offense was with Tyler Huntley. So what is it about Jeff Ulbrich's defense that lights up Mike McDaniel and Tua, I guess?
I don't know, really.
It's an anomaly, right? 4 games, 3+ points every game.
It is an anomaly. But the offense, again, I just think it comes down not necessarily to who you're facing. I just think it comes down to just making sure all the component parts work at the right time, staying on script, staying within the structure of that script, and that's what they did really, really well. I just thought they handled the minutiae better than Atlanta did, and I think they handled the minutiae better than they have done all season. I think that probably surprised the Falcons. Their pass rush wasn't a thing. I thought the offensive line generally played really well. I thought, well, not really well, but I played well. I thought Brewer and Paul were excellent. Savannah, I haven't watched the All-22, as I said, but it looks like he had his best game, certainly. I mean, there were some things that Kevin Harlan was saying about how he had a great block here. And, I mean, the touchdown to Malik Washington, he got walked, got dog walked back into Tua's lap, which is why Tua had to escape the pocket. So, but I just think it was the bits that worked really well. And I think if you can manage the bits, And look, when you run the ball and you stay consistent to run it, I know they average 3.8 yards per carry, but when you can stay consistent to that and you can drop the safeties down into the box, that opens up the ability to throw to Jalen Waddle and do the things that they did in the passing game. And if you're not going to stay consistent to the run, then you're not going to have those opportunities. So I think it was just more about piecing the bricks, piecing the bricks of the wall together in a more grown-up way than they have done over the last few weeks. And I think that was a large reason why they won.
Yeah, and the thing about Tua, there's not many quarterbacks in the league. You're talking about a handful that are better than Tua on 3rd and 4, 3rd and 5. If you could be on 3rd and 4, 3rd and 5 consistently with Tua Tagovailoa, you're going to convert a lot of third downs.
Well, that's the key word, isn't it? Consistently, and we've just not had that. And we've really, I think, if we're going to be really honest with ourselves, we've not really had that in the tenure that he's been here. And we've certainly not had it this season. So it's great to say, yeah, he played really well when we beat the Falcons, he played pretty well when we beat the Falcons, threw 4 touchdowns, did all the things that he was supposed to do. But which Tua is going to show up on Thursday night against Baltimore? Is it going to be the same Tua against Atlanta, or is it going to be? And I think that's what separates him from, the middle to upper echelon of quarterbacks. He's just not it's almost now on a game to game basis that he's not consistent. And maybe the visor and getting pink eye is a good thing, but who knows? I mean, if he shows up and puts, I think the most important thing for me is that can he show up and put together back-to-back good games? And I thought it was insightful that Melanie Collins said pre-game that what they tried to do is just to stop him thinking as much, stop getting in his own head, and all the things that we know that he does well. I think they kind of parlayed that into the game plan. And she said that he'd had really great practice Thursday, Friday, in part because he just wasn't thinking. He was just getting the ball out quick. Wasn't overthinking it, wasn't titting around. And I think that's not a scouting term, by the way. But I think that showed on Sunday that, he was accurate and decisive, and he generally didn't make bad decisions. But, it's just one game. Can he do it again on Thursday night? And then can he do it the following week? And then can he do it against Buffalo? And, because I think we're all of the belief that a new quarterback is incoming, and there's lots to decide and decipher about his future. But, it's one game at a time, and he just needs that consistency.
Yeah, and I think the Libertard Show had a great quote. They said that they brought down Frank Smith from the booth so he could do Tua's thinking for him.
Yeah, well, that's fair enough. But when you've got a quarterback who struggles with thinking, that's an issue.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not sure that I would go that far with. I think that the word of the day for the turnaround offensively is communication. And when you have Frank Smith down on the sidelines, you do have more communication between quarterback and the coaching apparatus that is calling these plays, and I think that communication is key. But then Mike McDaniel, after again they got knocked in the dirt so bad against the Browns that here comes Mike McDaniel talking about, well, I had a big film session with Tua this morning, and we've done that, maybe 2 or 3 times this year. He kind of mumbled his way through that, and I'm like, well, why doesn't that happen more often? You're the play caller. You're the play caller. He's the franchise quarterback. You guys need to be on the same page, right? You need to be really simpatico. But you're doing something this week that is clearly different because you're in the dumpster. You have lit fire to yourself. You are just an absolute atrocious team. And then they have probably the best offensive showing of the season. After that, it just reminds me that Tua, we're kind of the more we go forward, the more we stay the same. It's a lot like the Ryan Tannehill situation, where the secret to Ryan Tannehill, just as the secret is with Tua, is not getting him the fastest of these Smurf wide receivers and just stacking 3 apples high players onto the field and hoping that he can get the ball to them. The secret is actually play action. For Tua Tagovailoa, the secret is a consistent ground game. The secret for Ryan Tannehill was a consistent ground game. That was the way that you were always going to unlock him. And and sure enough, when he goes to the Tennessee Titans and he has damn near MVP caliber kind of seasons, what was that? I think that we're, the more things change, the more they stay the same. We're still stuck here with this thing. And it's still like a coaching staff that decides to forget that for most of the time until they have to remember it because, we're shitty. So I think that again, the discouraging thing, I think it was communication. I think that if you read a lot of what Kurt Warner talks about in this offense, in this passing offense in particular, there is a lot of disjointedness in the passing concepts and the way that read progressions go. It is a very targeted offense. They're basically telling the quarterback, this is where you're going with the ball. Now figure out a way to get it there. And so, I think that in this evolution of Tua as a quarterback, he was always supposed to be a Drew Brees analog. And at this stage, if you want him to continue to make up for what he lacks in his physical abilities, with ability to get you into and out of the right plays and get you into and out of the right concepts and go through a smooth read progression, then you need to have an offense like Breeze had with Sean Payton and not this offense. And I think there's an evolution. That said, we need to talk about Tua because we are convinced that things are over for him and what is the best way going forward. And the reason that the things are still over for Tua Tagovailoa, despite, he had a great game, stuff like that, is still the injuries. And we are almost walking into a Cinderella scenario where we have a season shaping up where he's halfway through it and he hasn't taken the big hit. He's halfway through it. He hasn't got knocked out. He's had some minor injuries. Nothing really to speak of. Pink eye, I don't know. And so, if he's able to go this year without getting hurt, that is your ticket to possibly getting out of this contract, right? Like right now, we're falling for the banana in the tailpipe. We're all like sitting here like, oh, well, the problem is Tua sucks. He's not even the starting corner. That's bullshit. I'm sorry, but anybody who thinks that is not a serious football person. Okay, of course he's a starting quarterback in the NFL, right? That's the talent that he has and that he puts on display. Can it go inconsistent and have some terrible games when you're on a terrible team? Which, for all the reasons we've been talking about for months and months, they are a terrible team. Everybody can have that. We've how many star quarterbacks have we been convinced it's completely over for them until it wasn't? It just is one of those things. If we're talking about Tua's talent and that's the reason that we're getting rid of him, then I think you're taking your eyes off the ball. It's the injury situation still, it's the concussion situation still. And if you get lucky enough that he stays healthy to where you can just convince some team that runs the right offense that this guy, for $20-30 million, if we discount that contract, for $20 or $30 million, this guy takes over your starting reins at quarterback. And, and you can go from there and you can have your honeymoon season with new, basically the Goff scenario. Then that would be a massive win for the Miami Dolphins, a massive win, because concussion is still number one risk. His hip is number two, And so if we're able to get through this healthy, but the only issue is that he had some bad games on a fucking terrible team with all the challenges that we've talked about and all the criticisms that we have about the offensive line, about the play calling. I mean, we laundry list these things every week, play calling, offensive line, the injuries and stuff like the way that Chris Greer builds his rosters. We laundry list that shit every week. Well, these are all the reasons a quarterback would struggle as well, occasionally, And so if we get it to that point where some other team can look at it and say, well, it got stale. The system got stale. The team was bad. No, they weren't running things right. We can do better over here. Then what a win that would be for the Miami Dolphins. But knowing them, they're the ones that are going to fall for it. The Dolphins are going to be the ones that fall for it. They're going to be the ones that'll say, oh, well, we should just go forward with Tua then. And then hence we have 4 more years of darkness.
4 more years of darkness is a great way to put it. All right, 2 things to end up here. I want to talk about the young guys. What did you think of the young guys yesterday? Because they were all on display. Dante Trader. I tend to count Hayden Rucci in there. Ollie Gordon. Like, Ollie Gordon should be a long-term piece for this team. Look, even Jalen Wright got off of mothballs and look kind of spry. They should have been playing 3 running backs from the beginning, okay? Even when they had Tyreek Hill. And as soon as Tyreek Hill went down, Devon Achane should have been playing more reps as the Z or the X or the Y and play these other running backs. Play the 3 running backs. They finally get to something like that. And some of these rookies look like something. And I came away kind of impressed across the board. Hayden Rucci, I put his 4 snaps, his 4 non-garbage time snaps, because in garbage time, like, they had, I don't know, there was people I didn't understand who the hell were in there. New right tackle, new right guard, new center. Like, it was a hodgepodge of crap, and they were just running belly over and over and over again. So I tend to discount that. But the 4 snaps I saw him play, this guy should be on the roster. He should be playing even if Julian Hill is there. And, okay, fine. You're going to have 2 blocking slugs. Is that a bad thing to have a tight end? Especially when you get Darren Waller back, that's fine. You have 1 pass catcher and 2 blocking slugs. Guess what? Blocking slugs work. So I came away impressed by the young guys yesterday. Simon, your thoughts on the slew of young guys that played yesterday?
I mean, I think you probably just said it all, to be fair. The one thing I caution against is it's one game. Like, I think we all like Ollie Gordon, and we'd like to see him get the ball more. But for everybody else, I think we can't be too over the top. I think it's one game in, whether that's, Savannah or whoever else it is. It's encouraging, but it's got to be, like we talked about 10 minutes ago, with the consistency with Tua. It's got to be consistency across multiple games now, and if that's not the case, then it's just a flash in the pan, and we've had so many flashes in the pan that we're due some kind of luck, and yet that there is an encouragement factor from those rookies, and that's great to see. But you just need to see it now for the rest of the season. It can't just be like one game here and then they disappear for 4 weeks, or they're, Savannah's play is terrible, or Grant disappears, or whatever. It's got to be on a consistent level, on a consistent basis. Otherwise, really, it's for naught. Look, certainly I think for Chris and I, and probably for you too, Alf, I think what you want to see is those rookies really begin to develop, but we continue to lose games. That would be the ultimate in many regards, because you don't want to end up, as I said at the top of the show, you don't want to end up with 6 or 7 wins, find yourself picking 13, 14, 15, 16, and, lose out on the opportunity to draft one of the quarterbacks, or Bain, or Mansour Delane, or, somebody like that. That would be the issue, I think. And finding yourself middle of the pack yet again is not what this team needs moving forwards, quite apart from the fact that the implications for general manager and or head coach as well. So, but yeah, look, encouraging, but it's one game.
Yeah. By the way, do you know the origin of flash in the pan?
I don't, but I'm sure you're going to tell me.
Yeah, it's I used to think it meant something completely different. I used to think that it meant like when you were mining for gold and you had it in the pan, you saw a glimmer of gold and you thought it was a piece of gold, and you're like, okay, no, it's another mineral. It's not gold. It's not that. It's actually a flintlock pistol from the 1700s. If it will flash in the pan, you would think it was going to fire, it was going to ignite the fuse to fire a projectile down the barrel, but it did not. So it was essentially a flash in the pan.
Things you learn.
Yes.
Did you also know Flash in the Pan were an Australian new wave musical trio?
I had no idea.
Sort of post-disco, pre-house percussive dance music.
It's a great name for a band. Like that nobody ever thought about it is until they did. You know,
that's the best description for them, though.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Chris, you got anything to say about the slew of
about Flash in the Pan?
Yeah,
or about Flash in the Pan?
Yeah, the buffet, the smorgasbord of young guys that saw snaps yesterday and played prominent roles.
Well, I think first on defense, you did get some snaps out of Storm Duck. Unfortunately, he's now out for the season. So that's not going to go. Obviously, didn't go that well for him. But you started to see, I think, more dialing down of the younger guys. Jordan Phillips, I think his total snaps were somewhere in the teens. I think Jordan Phillips overall. Not to be confused with Jalen Phillips, who played quite a bit, but PFF says Jordan only played 16. Kenneth Grant played 25. You're dialing them down. You're asking less of these guys. You're also kind of streamlining what they need to be doing on these plays and the situations that they're being called to go out there on the field. This is helping players to flash better. So I think that yes, you're seeing some of that. I would caution about Hayden Rucci. It is one game, but it does call to mind what Mike McDaniel said, but then didn't really follow through on, which is that if you're continually affecting the team or routinely affecting the team negatively, then we have to go assess somebody else. And I think that at this point, you might be there with Julian Hill. Like we might need to assess someone else at this point. But clearly, if they had a ton of trust there, then they wouldn't be breaking out Daniel Brunskill as a sixth offensive lineman a bunch of the time. Because what is Hayden Rucci if not a blocking specialist? Well, if we need a blocking specialist, why am I not just getting Brunskill out there? They even put that guy in motion, in those short motions, and
that looked great.
That way. So he's kind of caught in a spot still. I wouldn't really, I caution against reading too much into it, but defensively, I think some of the younger players are starting to get it some more. And I just think I can't help but think that's also because the coaches are figuring out, in what ways to use those guys and what to ask them to do on their specific plays. Jonas Avayanea, I'm sorry, but I don't care what Kevin Harlan says. He still has not had a good game.
It's King Kevin Harlan to you.
King, yes, I'm sorry. I'm sorry to the King, but he has still not had a good game, and that does not qualify. So, we'll see.
Yeah. All right, let's finish up here. We're going to do game balls, and then we're going to do a segment I just created in my head. We're going to do this once a week. We're going to give you an update on the quarterbacks of the 2026 class, or maybe the ones that are not going to come out, or the ones that do. Okay, but let's do game balls. I'll go first. I think it's too easy to just give a game ball to Tua Tagovailoa. I'm going to give my game ball on the defensive side of the ball. Jalen Phillips was a menace in that game, and I think, and I've said it before, and I'll say it one more time, it's going to take a smart general manager, to figure this one out. But if I'm in charge, I'm walking into the conference room and talking to my scouts and my front office people and saying, let's figure out how to have this guy here next year and on a reasonable deal, because I fear that somebody else could get the best of Jalen Phillips. So I'm going to give my game ball to Jalen Phillips on the defensive side of the ball. Your thoughts, Simon, your game ball.
Defensively, Jordan Brooks. Offensively, I thought Alec Ingold played really well. And kind of less obvious than Brewer or anybody else. So I would give them to those two.
Chris.
Yeah, defensively, I don't want to repeat what Simon did with Jordan Brooks, but I'll give it, or you with Jalen Phillips, so I'll give it to Zach Sealer because he had legitimately, I think it was his best game so far this year. And again, that probably goes back to the usage. Offensively, I do think you have to give it to Tua Tagovailoa. I think that he consistently made plays through the game, and he made the big ones, and he made the small ones, and it was just he was supported, but he also made a lot of plays. So you have to give it to him. Four touchdowns.
Yeah, and I'd be remiss if we're not. I'm not going to give props to Devon Achane, who reached 30 touchdowns in 36 games, the fastest to ever do it in franchise history, and he's averaging 7/8 of a touchdown per game. At that rate, he will overtake Ricky Williams next season, which means that he'll do it inside of 4 years. Ricky played 8, so that's pretty impressive from Devon Achane. And minor kudos to Jalen Waddle. He has a great connection with Tua Tagovailoa, and the proof is in the pudding. When Tyreek Hill is out, he puts up big numbers. And I'm talking about big numbers. Okay? So he's headed for a pretty damn good season. All right, let's end it right here. Simon, give us an update on the weekend and one question on Ty Simpson. Any concerns? Todd McShay was saying the only knock, and Todd McShay is pretty hot on Ty Simpson. And he's also revealed that a lot of general managers it's not a secret anymore. They consider Ty Simpson to probably be QB1 as of right now. He says the only knock, and as soon as he said, I said, ooh, that's a pretty big knock. He does not meet the Bill Parcells 25 start threshold.
No.
So your thoughts, where are we with all the quarterbacks for 2026? And your thoughts on that knock that Todd McShay has mentioned?
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing you can do to change that. He's right. 5-star quarterback, sat behind really good quarterbacks, Jalen Milroe, and then obviously starting this year, he can't change that. What I think I like about him, and I saw the Todd McShay thing, and actually McShay said he reminded him of Joe Burrow. What I think is interesting, given that he's only started 8, maybe 9 games, is that the things that you look for in an NFL quarterback. So the instincts, the composure under pressure, the feel for the system, his footwork, the middle of the field anticipation, those NFL throws, the outs, the digs, the pocket navigation, and the instinct. They're all really, really plus for him. And I think that's really important. The things that would concern me are the size, listed at 6'2", 208, but probably isn't that big. And what you said, the lack of starts, the lack of experience, but he has sat, on arguably the best team of the last 10 years, and sat there for 4 years. So he's an interesting kid. He's a really good quarterback, and he's playing. I think it's instructive when people like Dan Orlovsky and people like that are coming out and saying he's the clear-cut number 1 quarterback if he comes out. So I think that's very interesting. I just like how he throws guys open. His ball placement, his accuracy is good. I have to say that watching the 8 starts, I prefer Fernando Mendoza at this point. I just think he's more comfortable, although schematically it's very different, and he runs what we would traditionally call more of a collegiate, less of an NFL scheme, and we talked about this last week or the week before in terms of how their system works. But just for me, just personally, I prefer Mendoza with the size profile. Both of them have got really strong arms. As for the rest of the quarterbacks, look, it's impossible to say. Who knows what will happen, because who knows who's going to come out. NIL money is so important and has changed the game so much. I thought Garrett Nussmeier played pretty well. Certainly in the first half in defeat. He's not helped by that really porous offensive line against Texas A&M. Taylor Green has kind of tailed off a little bit. Certainly there's some of those accuracy issues that we talked about in the short and intermediate routes have been a bit of an issue over the last 3 weeks, and his accuracy numbers in terms of completion percentage are way down. But he's still such an intriguing player. Carson Beck, obviously, I mean, he kind of tanked his own with the 4 picks, and it could have been about 10 a couple of weeks ago when they lost to Louisville. So and then we obviously know that guys like Allah and Club. The interesting thing for me is the guys that aren't being talked about an awful lot, but we saw the Texas A&M kid at the weekend who people have talked a lot about potentially coming out or being a big quarterback for 2027. And I think that's something definitely to keep an eye on. And then you've got, someone like Marcel Reed, I'm talking about Texas A&M. And then you've got guys like, Darian Mensah, who's a redshirt sophomore, Nick Iamaleava, who was at Tennessee, who's kind of resurrected his career a little bit at UCLA. I think he probably stays. Josh Hoover at TCU, Aiden Charles at Michigan State, all of these kind of guys. And then obviously Dante Moore, who's been talked about. But I suspect Chris, the NIL money and the Nike money will probably keep him at Oregon. But yeah, there's some interesting candidates, but at the moment I think it looks like these are going to be the two, Simpson. But look, we don't know what will happen. Ty Simpson may go back because he's got eligibility remaining to do so. Fernando Mendoza might go back. He's a redshirt junior. So, Indiana get close. They've just re-signed Kurt Signetti. They've got a lot of money coming into the school, and Mendoza might get to the to the national championship game and lose to Ohio State, or it might win the national championship, and he might decide, what, we're keeping some guys. We've got guys coming back. I might just run it back for another year. He's got nothing to lose by doing so, especially knowing that his head coach and is going to stay there, and they're going to be extremely competitive when it comes to being able to bring in transfer guys from across the country. So look, we could be in a situation where neither Simpson or Mendoza come out, which is something I think definitely worth keeping an eye on.
I think Simpson, because of the lack of experience, if he's got eligibility left, listen, you're already kind of old, and I don't think that's going to matter as much anymore. You saw Tyler Shuck go pretty high despite being on the older side, and with NIL it's sort of like you're fighting the tide at this point, and I don't mean no pun intended with Ty Simpson being on Bama, but no, I think that because of that lack of experience, that's going to be a strong argument for him to go back. When I watch him, yes, the size does concern me. No, I don't necessarily see, sort of the sort of freakish abilities that you see in some of these other guys. That's not
he's not
So, and that's not to hold. I'm not trying to hold anything against him, because those guys wear gold jackets, but if you're looking at the game and you're saying, I want my Josh Allen freak, then obviously it's not Ty Simpson. You would be looking at guys like Lenora Sellers. You would be looking at guys like Taylon Green. Fernando Mendoza, I think, is really interesting because he does have that sort of arm. He has a rule-breaking arm. And I think that he also just has this knack for, getting the offense into the best execution and throw after throw. It's just always super impressive. And I think that, off the field, he's like an A+ from everything that I've heard. He is going to come out, in my opinion, because there's some sibling dynamics going on there. He was recruited to be at Indiana. His goal was to be an NFL quarterback. Like, his goal wasn't to, continue to be a college quarterback. He was looking for the best place to brush him up and be a great NFL quarterback prospect. So he goes to Indiana to join his brother and to play ahead of his brother. And they've even talked about, I'll have my time, and then it'll be my brother's turn, and so I think that will weigh on him. And at this point, look at the schedule. They already went through the crucible of playing in Oregon, right? Yes, there's going to be a college football playoff, and there's going to be some more hard games. But I almost think that it, realistically speaking, especially because he's so talented, it's hard to imagine him having games that say, well, no, I need to go back to school. I think that he's shown enough. To me, the more we go on, the more obvious it becomes that he's the number 1 overall pick. No, I don't trust the GMs are saying this right now or things like that. And I don't necessarily even trust guys like Dan Orlovsky and people like that, because they're so busy with the NFL season right now. They're not digging. I love those guys' instincts and experience level. I don't necessarily love the amount of work that they're probably not doing on college players when they're busy and mired in the middle of NFL season. So I'm talking about the talking heads, of course, and I don't think that the GMs really know at this point. They're letting things play out and come to them. So do I have reservations about Ty Simpson's lack of experience? Yes, I definitely do. I definitely think that you need to know a lot about a guy and how he's going to handle a lot of different situations, including some really poor situations, to kind of really understand what's going to happen when he goes to the NFL to a bad team. Inevitably, it's going to be a bad team. So yeah, that's kind of how it shakes out right now to me. Is I'm still eyes on Fernando Mendoza and a handful of physically very gifted players to see how the rest of the season is going to play out. And a lot of these guys, I maintain a lot of them are, if they can go back, they're probably going to go back, and I think the one exception is going to be Mendoza. And I would have said Mateer, but now I'm even questioning that. So
yeah, he's playing. It's obvious he's playing through injuries, and it's affecting him. Simon, no chance that Jaden Maivia is going to come out. Maiava is going to come out.
Sorry, no.
Maiava.
Maiava.
Maiava? Not Maiava?
No, Maiava.
Maiava. Jaden Maiava. No chance he's coming out, right?
I mean, I don't know. I don't know. There's no chance he's coming out.
It's USC. It's USC. We're talking big NIL money.
This is his second year at USC, so it's possible. I always talk about giving the new transfer team a 2-year commitment, but he didn't start last year. That's the monkey wrench in that. So he only started the last couple of games last year. So again, there's the lack of experience thing. At USC at a bigger program. Maybe it appeals to him to go back to school. He's certainly going to get paid for it.
Yeah. I mean, he's got a lot of things. You look at the numbers. The numbers are, leads the Big Ten in passing yards. He ranks top 5 in touchdowns. He has one of the best quarterback ratings in the country.
Number 1 QBR in the nation.
Yeah, you look, he's throwing for more yards than Ty Simpson, 15 touchdowns to 4 picks.
Number one passer rating in 20 air yards or more throws.
Yep. So 19, 25 plus yard completions this season. So, I think he can stretch the field without sacrificing efficiency and stuff. And
he's giant, so he hits every box.
Yeah, but I think he's probably going to go back. I just think for quarterback, look, it's a cautionary tale, right? It's, do you stay, do you go? And you look at 2 quarterbacks in Drew Alla and Cade Klubnik, who probably would have been first-round picks last year if they'd come out. And they decided to go back, and credit to them for doing so. But now Alla may well go undrafted. I mean, the injury certainly plays into that, but he was playing like a third-day prospect. And Klubnik has just really struggled. And, there were some Bo Nix similarities, I thought, to him last year, and he's that kind of type of player. And I think he probably ends up on the 3rd day as well. So it is a cautionary tale for quarterbacks. But I just think, the NIL money and the opportunity to continue to grow and expand your talent is often too hard to pass up.
All right. And we will check in again in a couple of weeks on this slew of quarterback prospects. It's going to be a decent class. 2027 is going to be absolutely loaded. And even Arch Manning is beginning to look like something. So that could be a crowded field.
I think he's healthy now. I think that was the issue early on the season. I think there was an injury there because he's just too good. I think the one thing, and Chris made a really great point yesterday privately when we were chatting, which is that if you're a Miami Dolphins fan, you do not want Josh Allen in Buffalo, Drake May, who's playing like an MVP in New England, and then Fernando Mendoza in New York. And be sort of locked out of the quarterback situation, knowing how long
the New Orleans Saints are coming to our rescue. Simon.
Well, let's hope the Miami Dolphins are coming to our rescue. You know, I just don't think that's a situation that bodes well. You know, we're talking about macro pictures. That is not a macro picture that bodes well for the Miami Dolphins.
All right, and we're going to end it here. We will be with you on Wednesday for a brief show. We will preview Ravens, Dolphins. And again, thank you to Govee.com for giving us those 3 pairs that we gave away on our Discord. And if you want to become a member of our Discord, check the links that I put in every single one of our promos. It's at discord.gg/OnlyFins. You become a member there for all access for $4.99 a month. Make sure to do it on a desktop. Avoid the Apple upcharges. All right.
Plus, you get Kyle Krabs as well, not just us.
Yes. Yeah, he's on there. So yeah, he's like the unofficial 4th member.
He
All right.
he haunts the place like a ghost.
Yeah, he haunts. The other day, somebody was saying, "Where's Kyle Krabs? I haven't seen him." I'm like, he changed his name to the Big Draft Guy.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
he
keeps
keeps
changing his name.
He's the 5th Beatle, essentially.
yeah. All right. That's it. There is no more. We will talk to you again on Wednesday. But till then.
Cheers, guys.
See ya.